Hi team, it's Richie Greer here. Intro music was quite slow to start there, but we'll get underway anyway. Welcome to our Quick Connect podcast, where you can stay informed, keep connected, and learn from one another along the way. We're up to episode 30 of our Quick Connect podcast, and it's always a pleasure to share the stories of our people that we coach that are out there doing all sorts of awesome stuff. We chatted to Nat Gallant last week, and this week we're talking to another person from the top of the south, Geoff Roe, who has just completed the Sounds to Sounds, which is a pretty epic bike packing adventure that runs from Marlborough Sounds all the way down to Milford Sound. So we're going to have a chat to Geoff about what his adventure was about, how he prepared for it, how he found it, what happened along the way, who he got to ride with, what the hard bits were and maybe the easy bits, and maybe share a few stories about maybe a few things to learn and some things to share for you if you're looking at similar adventures along the way. I've been talking about the last few weeks, our adventure squad. There's a couple of spots left, still up for grabs, 4th of May, 8th of June, 20th of July. So if you want to come out and join us, feel free to do so. There is a bunch of people traveling from all over the country and all over the world, with Ben heading in from Sydney as well. So it'd be great to be able to share an adventure together on foot into the mountains, which would be super fun. So hopefully you're going well. Hopefully your week started well. And let's bring Geoff onto the show without further ado. Geoff, come in.
Hi, Richard.
How are you getting on today?
Good. It's a beautiful, mostly sunny day here in Nelson, so it's been nice.
It's always sunny. You wouldn't say anything else, even if it was raining, I'd imagine. Yep.
I won't turn the camera.
How are the tan lines going from your Sounds to Sounds adventure?
Yeah, it's really marked on the legs. The bike shorts are probably a bit shorter than my normal shorts. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. So, and we're going to talk about sort of your big mission that you completed, but that was was it a week and a half ago that you finished, something like that, a couple of weeks ago. And how's the body now? Yeah. How's your recovery been?
Body's feeling really good now. I think I didn't take into account how long I feel tired for afterwards. Like I just thought, oh well, you just carry on and keep going, but there's definitely that fatigue, especially the few days afterwards, and a real brain fade the day after, which was just poor decision-making ability. Couldn't decide what cafe to go to or anything like that on the way home. So.
It was just all too hard, which is fair enough. That's okay. But yeah, you don't sort of realize how bad you are sometimes until a few days later. It's like, I was pretty useless there to do too much. So you had your lovely wife that come down to pick you up and take you home. That's one thing. You don't want to have to ride home again. So that was pretty useful.
Yeah, very useful.
Good stuff. That's awesome. So give us some stats. I want to know how long it took you. I want to know how far it was. Potentially, if you've got some elevation gains, that's always interesting to know. But tell us about how big this thing actually is.
So the route itself is 1,500 kilometres, and it took me 10 days. But you can take however long you want to do the route. So the minimum length of time is 5 days, and people do it over a month as well. So there's sort of a real variety of times that you can spend out on the trail if you're following the official brevet. Otherwise, you can do it however long you want, really. Nice. It took me 10 days of riding, some days a bit longer than others. And I think just quickly looking through my Strava here, apart from the day in Canterbury, I seem to average mostly around 1,500 meters a day. I think my biggest day was a couple of 1,000 meters of elevation gain.
Yep. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, on the first day, apparently.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you actually started in the Milford Sound, like the Ships Cove, I think, didn't you? Way out. So there's Queen Charlotte Walkway is pretty up and downy. There's some steep little pinches out there, which you'll tell us about shortly. But that's a good way to get underway. So tell us about the start line. How does this thing go? Because I think that's a really cool thing with this. It's not just a, hey, go and do it, sort yourself out. It's a, actually, we're going to gather together at the start and we're going to start this. And there's a bit of a, everyone's together. And then you kind of naturally figure out who you end up riding with just based on how many Ks you're doing a day and how fast you're traveling.
Yeah, it was really cool. We got a boat out of Picton. So there were 2 boats that left Picton carrying around, well, there were 105 registered. And I think the majority of us all started on a Monday morning. So it's all dark and some people were doing it in groups. I was doing it by myself and things. And you're also loading your bikes onto the boats. And then it's about an hour's boat trip out to Ships Cove. So you start talking to people on the boat, make a few friends and things, and you get to Ships Cove, unload. And the guy who runs Map Progress, he has a bit of a speech about the whole thing, bit of a very vague safety briefing, and then sets us off in sort of waves. He just says, those who think they're going to get past Blenheim tonight, you guys set off first. And that was my plan. So I set off with that group, and then those who's plan to get to Picton, those who get to Blenheim, those who get to Picton, and then those who think they'll stay on the Queen Charlotte. And then you sort of just rode off and you sort of found company along the way quite a bit. So I think the first time I really found company was down the Awatere Valley. I was sitting underneath a tree on the second day, having a bit of lunch and a bit of a relax, and the rider behind caught up to me. He decided good time for lunch too, and then we rode up the Awatere Valley to Molesworth together, and eventually we finished together on the same day as well, so that was quite cool too.
That's super cool. So what's the, like, it's a group, it's an organized event. What was the entry criteria? What was the entry fee? How did that look like? What did that look like?
So the entry fee was really quite cool and quite made it quite easy to do as well. So it was $100 donation to a charity of your choice. So you just had to prove that you'd made a donation, and then you had to send off a carbon credit kind of thing, and then pay for the boat trip out as well. So financially, it was really achievable. $100 for a 1,500 kilometre event is absolutely minuscule in comparison. I think the round Lake Brun is more than $100, and it's only 104k that I've got coming up. So,
per K rate, but you've also got to negotiate with the family to actually get a leave pass, and then also figure out with work they can get away. They're probably the biggest costs in terms of doing this to actually line things up, aren't they? How did that go for you?
I've got an amazingly supportive wife who I'm very, very lucky to have, who let me disappear, and she was on childcare. It took a week for us to drive down there and drive back as well. So she had my 10-year-old for a week, one-on-one in a car for 3 days, travelling down the South Island. So I've got a lot to make up for more.
We also talked about, I think the last 2 podcasts, we've also said that nobody listens to this podcast, so you'll be fine. And after there was a bit of, don't tell my partner this, but we'll also, we can edit out that bit about you've got a lot to make up for as well. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so got that organised. So how did the sort of first day unfold for you? Because there's obviously the Queen Charlotte Walkway, and then there's kind of some road options that you could detour to as well. How did you do that? What did you do there, and what were others doing?
So I had read that it would take 5 to 7 hours to ride the Queen Charlotte. So I took that and thought, 5 to 7 hours, that's not too bad. Mid-afternoon, get to Anakiwa, plenty of time to get to Blenheim, absolutely no worries. But I was very, very wrong and underestimated it hugely. It took me, it was 9 p.m. by the time I rolled into Picton I'd started at 8 a.m. in the morning. There are some road options, but I thought, I'm tough. I'm, no problems. I'll just push on down and do the whole walkway.
Yeah.
Which was a lot more pushing than I realized. And I just watched. At one point, I was sort of sitting under a tree, feeling really hot, really tired, drinking as much water as possible, and just watched how I'd been pretty much left for dead, almost at the back of the field,
Yeah.
And feeling like maybe I'd made the wrong choice. There were a couple of other options to head down to the road. There was a bit just out of Portage.
Yeah.
And I thought about it, but then it was about another 8K along the trail. But I only had another 8K of trail to do, and I felt committed to. I've come this far already. I may as well just finish off the rest.
Do it properly. Well. Yeah. Keep your standards high. But obviously your bike's fully laden as well. That makes a difference because the track is a bit niggly in places. There's obviously, as you say, steep uphill, but there's also some rough sections in there as well.
I cheated a bit, or I don't know if it's quite cheating, but there were some people who would keep your gear. So there was one guy around, and he'd done the brevet before. He'd lived in Picton and stuff. He said, just come drop your gear off at my house. So I think when I went off, there were a whole heap of other people's gear as well there. So I didn't take all my camping gear and things, and just took sort of the essentials that I thought I'd need for the day with me. So it did make it a little bit easier, but it was still a long day out there.
Yeah. Nice. So got that done. I think that's sort of bitten a few other people. That Jan Sipple, who have had on the podcast before, she had a tough day out in that first day, and you mentioned it was hot, which it's been like in the past. So you'd be pleased to get that one done, but also you sort of have a bit of a schedule there too to sort of play with. Obviously, you've got your wife coming down to meet you at the end. How did the days following that go?
So because I'd planned this 150k a day, and I'd only done 90 on the first day, I had this lingering thought in the back of my head continuously that I was behind schedule and that I needed to make up this extra distance. And so then doing the second day, we sort of biked into the Cobb Cottage, which was absolutely beautiful, great place. And I'd done 170k that day, so I'm sitting there doing some maths in my head, going, "Oh, okay, I've made up 20k. I've got another 40k to make up still to get back on track, and then carry on as normal." And I think, in hindsight, reflecting on just letting some days be longer and some days be shorter than others. Some days we're going to be more road, some days we're going to be more rough. And sort of realizing that, it'll even itself out eventually. But it took me a long time to figure that bit out.
Yeah. You had a tent with you as well. So you sort of did have that flexibility in terms of accommodation. You weren't having to get to this point exactly. I think that's something that you did really well with your planning, is that you didn't have to be super strict because you had that tent backup option, and you'd sort of will look to kind of make it up as you go along. Did you have key things booked or key nights booked, or not so much?
I had nothing booked, which sort of can be a bit of a double-edged sword. So for you go into some pretty small towns, and if you are looking for accommodation, you might be left short. Or there's also other days where there's no real areas to wild camp, so that area through Christchurch. So on the third day from Christchurch to the Rakaya Gorge, there's nowhere really to camp, which made things a bit difficult as well. It sort of meant that you had to push out a bit further.
Oh, you could have swung past Kiwi, Geoff. That's middle of the Canterbury Plains, but I think you were up at Sheffield. Did you go across the inland bridge, or did you come through Christchurch?
I came through Christchurch. There's an option to go around Oxford, and go over the Waimak Bridge. And I think if I was to do it again, I would definitely take that route.
Yeah.
I felt like I faffed around way too much in Christchurch, going to shops and doing all sorts of bits and pieces that just weren't really necessary,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
just sort of seemed to fluff away at time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we need to write this
However,
in the calendar
yeah,
for next week, because actually Jan did stay on our backyard, and we offered her the couch and to come inside, but she actually stayed in a tent outside. So in the future, we need to put it out there to everyone, is that if you are missioning across the Canterbury Plains, well, Kerwee, there's a spot to stay. So we'll put that out there.
we'll deviate off the course from Rolleston maybe and come straight up.
Exactly. We need to work that one out. Nice one. So you were sort of on a bit of a mission. You were a little bit behind schedule still, or felt like that was the case. And I mean, the flat Canterbury Plains is a chance to kind of get a bit of time or distance back on the way, sort of thing, as you're sort of heading through to Geraldine and then to Teamcpnz. So tell us a little bit about that. How did you sort of go over that time? And was a tailwind helpful for you, or you're battling headwinds?
I had an absolutely fantastic day coming out of Hawarden. So woke up to an earthquake, which was a bit of a shock, but that was fine. And then had this very gentle hill climb out of Hawarden, and we came into Amberley, where I had beautiful second breakfast. And then down, it's pretty much a straight shot down into Christchurch, where I had a good tailwind, lots of flat roads and things. But a lot of it, they try and push you away from the main highways as much as possible. So we went via Leithfield and then sort of went inland to Ashley and then down to Rangiora and then onto the cycleway. I think the cycleway was just out of Rangiora, actually. That leads you all the way into Christchurch, which was really good to keep off the roads and things as well, which is what this course tries to put you on as many back roads, gravel roads, and away from highways as much as possible.
Yeah. So traffic just wasn't an issue. You felt safe while you're riding your bike, because it is definitely a thing.
Yeah. Through Christchurch, I didn't really seem to have any major issues. There was only, probably a handful of times on the whole journey where I thought, oh, that car passed me a bit close, but it might also have been, I was tired and maybe the perceptions are a little bit different. There was one really cool farmer out on the way to the Rakai Gorge, and going down this long gravel road that had just seen a grader by the looks of things. And I was struggling along and heard a car come up behind me, so I pulled off to the left side and went up on the grass. And then the farmer pulls up in his ute and he gets right up onto the right side on the grass and goes down the grass for miles so he doesn't kick up a dust cloud, and then pops back on. And I was like, oh man, that's really kind. I was really impressed.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it? That's awesome. So tell us about the Mackenzie Pass, cycling over that, and how are you getting on there?
Yeah, so the Mackenzie Pass, I started off the day at the Rakai Gorge, ended up doing 180k, and I was looking at getting to Teamcpnz was my goal. So you come down pretty much alongside the mountains through to Geraldine, was feeling really good. It was scorchingly hot, had the sunblock out. And then got onto Pleasant Point, and it started to get a bit more cold and sort of not really miserable, but just a bit cloudy and a bit grey. Looked like it was going to rain. And then sort of carried on and went to a place called Cave, which I'd never heard of before, and started cycling down some valleys and farmlands on the back road to Teamcpnz instead of going through Fairley and over the normal road path. The rain was really, I remember really enjoying it. at first. It was like this gentle drizzle. It was very atmospheric. It was really nice to cool down. It was feeling really good. But then by the end of the ride, I was starting to get pretty over it. It was getting late. It was sort of about 8:30 at night, so it was getting dark and things. And I finally reached the summit of the Mackenzie Saddle. And then my bike computer, I don't know how it has a little has another person that you chase on it, and it said that the person had arrived in Tekapo already. And I was like, oh God, I'm still 40, 50k away from Tekapo. There's feeling a bit down, but I decided to put the tent up on the side of the road there and camp out in the rain. But stayed pretty nice and dry and things. And I think the next section was, there are lots of creeks marked on the maps, but something about Canterbury and especially Otago is these creeks are dry a lot of the time, or have very little or really low flow water in them. So I'd assumed there was plenty of water along the way, but there was none. So I was really trying to conserve my water, and I probably should have packed a bit more water, which is sort of something in hindsight. I had plenty of capacity to carry water. I just hadn't replenished it early enough, or taken opportunities earlier, or gone into a farmhouse earlier and asked for water. So, yeah, I think that was one of the learnings from there.
Yeah. You got to the top of Mackenzie Pass, and you were this whole thing about I'm behind after that very first day, but then you realise actually I'm not behind anymore.
Yeah, I think that was about the time where I came to my senses a little bit as well. And I think it was one of those areas where I realised, and all you had to do every day was turn the pedals and keep eating, and sometimes put up a tent. So you really had little to actually do each day, but somehow it takes a lot of brain power. And I'd completely missed a day. So all of a sudden I realised I was going to turn up in Milford a day before my wife could even get there. So there was no way for her to get there any earlier, because my son had the Weet-Bix triathlon that he was doing as well. And couldn't miss that. So from there, I think the event became a bit easier mentally as well. You're like, actually, I've got tons of time to complete this, and I'm riding really, really well. So I ended up having quite a short day the next day. Going to the Lake Ohau Lodge, which is an absolutely beautiful place. And I had really minimal elevation following all those canals and bits and pieces. I only had like 600 meters of elevation on that day, so it was tiny. It was nice.
All of a sudden you're able to enjoy it a lot more as well. Like you're not rushed. You can kind of but also you're well on your way by that stage as well. Like you've got a number of days under your belt, and you can sort of look forward to what's ahead of you. Tell us about the Omarama Saddle. That sounds like a bit of a mission, getting up and over there. Yeah,
the Omarama Saddle, I don't particularly feel like I have any need to redo this. So however, if I want to do this again, I'm going to have to do it again. So it was really quite nice and easy to Omarama. It was beautiful trail doing the Alps to Ocean Trail. And then starts off really nice and gently, and you just follow this farm road up. And then all of a sudden you have you look up at the mountains, and they just go straight up. It's amazing. And then ended up into a 5-kilometer hiker bike, where I was just pushing constantly to get up the hill. I'm not a fantastic mountain biker, but the couple that I was riding with are pretty good. And so they seem to be riding a lot easier than I did. They seem to be able to ride the majority of it by the looks of it.
Yeah.
And it was just pushing all the way to the saddle, and then got to the top, rode down what was a fairly steep descent. It felt like it just dropped straight off the side of the hill
Yeah.
to get down to the valley. And then I was chatting to the friends I'd made on the way and another bloke, and then realised that my tyres were still at 50 psi as well. So I was like, oh, yeah, no wonder it was so bumpy.
Rattling you a bit.
Yeah. So I made sure I took some of the pressure out of the tyres, which did make it a lot easier, funnily enough.
Yeah, good.
As we went down this valley, and it was just I think there's 35 different stream crossings going down this rocky valley road that seems to have had absolutely no attention to it for the last 50 years or so. But it was one of those things where you sort of finish it and you look back and you go, I'm quite proud I managed that. It was quite a good effort, but we were quite lucky this year. The creeks were quite low, but there have been some years where they've been really high and made it difficult to pass. So.
Yeah. Nice one. And then it's on to Centro Otago basically by that stage, isn't it? And cruising through there, you had your only mechanical of the trip. I mean, it's one thing that definitely riders considering this, you need to be sort of able to manage yourself and get yourself through that. But what was your mechanical issue, and how were you prepared for that?
So I've got an aero rack on the back of my bike, which I've used for forever or for several years now. Somehow or another, the rack system itself came free of the bracket. I don't know whether it had got loose and jiggled out or what had happened. I think they're more made for mountain bikes, not gravel bikes. So maybe the geometry's not quite perfect to get the bars into these brackets quite right. But anyway, it came out once. I was a bit frustrated. I stopped and sort of tried to fix it up and things, and that was all right. And then kept on riding, and then it bounced out again. At that point, it had got really windy on the tops. It was getting quite cold. Could see some quite big grey clouds roll in, and I threw a bit of a sulk and sort of swore that I'd throw it off the mountainside if it wouldn't fit back in properly and things. But managed to calm myself and have a bit of a drink, a bit of a feed, and then sort of work through it a bit more methodically. It was just unscrewing a whole heap of bolts and trying to squeeze it back in and then setting it all back up. But it was all the faff of taking bits apart and then having to put it all back together again that I wasn't really enjoying at the time.
Yes, yeah. Well, I'm pleased you didn't have to go and collect your bike from off the side of the cliff. You managed to have something to eat, have a sit down, have a drink, and then sort of sort it out, and then sort of crack on for that. And then you're sort of off to down south after that, sort of off to the Round the Mountain Trail and Mossburn and things like that, thinking about Te Anau, and then also catching up with the crew that you've sort of toed and froed with throughout the course of the time. The Railway Hotel was another thing that you mentioned. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it was really cool getting off that mountain into a place called Garston and onto the Round the Mountains Trail. It was super flat, nice, hard-packed gravel, perfect for my bike and my setup, and we just absolutely flew through there. And then had a tailwind, and it was absolutely, I was doing 35k and just absolutely loving life.
Yep.
And then turned a corner, and the tailwind very quickly stops becoming a tailwind, and rode into Mossburn, where I caught up with the other couple I'd been riding on and off with. And we sort of had a bit of a discussion about options for the next night, where we were going, and we'd kind of got to this point where distances became a bit awkward. So our next planned campsite, we were planning to go to Te Anau, but we ended up calling it a day in Mossburn.
Yep.
And then we had the finish line, which was 210 kilometres away from where we were, or our planned campsite, which was 170, making a really short day on the last day.
Yeah.
So weren't too sure what to do. We ended up having dinner at the railway hotel. They stayed at the railway hotel, and there was a really awesome character. Mossburn is the link between the Sounds to Sounds and the Tour Aotearoa. They both cross through Mossburn. It's the only time they come into contact. And the guy at the pub who owns it is a really nice South African bloke. He keeps an eye on all the riders coming through on the Map Progress app and things. And so he knows who's coming in and things like that. And he's stayed up late in the past to make sure that people are getting dinner, even if they're turning up at 11 p.m. at night, and making sure they've got somewhere to stay, which is really quite cool that he puts this much effort into the riders coming through his town. So it's quite a great service for the riders. Through that. Brilliant food, huge portions.
No good. He's got enough feedback. Got it dialed. I like it.
Yeah. And then that final day was from Mossburn to Milford.
Yeah. So tell us about Milford, the tunnel. What was that like? And can you is it rideable? Can you, or what's the situation in terms of actually getting through the tunnel?
So it's definitely rideable. I'm not too sure if they've got a person there all the time, but there's a traffic light system. I just hung behind the one car that was at the traffic light at the time, because there's still a little bit of a climb to go. So let him go through first. We had a bit of a chat. And he said, "You'll absolutely smash me down the other side. You'll fly like a motorbike." So he pulled over at the first sort of pullover spot and let me go, had a wave and carried on. I didn't realise until I came back that there's a 30 km/h speed limit through the tunnel. And the tunnel just absolutely drops off 1,200 metres and just this absolutely amazing descent. I looked down at one stage and my speedo was reading 70 km/h. So I just
more than double
the time of my life. Then on the drive back, I was like, "Oh, there's speed limit sign there. I didn't see that before."
Because you're going so fast. No point. At least you went behind the car.
Yeah, that tunnel and that descent into Milford is an absolutely amazing ride. I think we were quite lucky. I left Tiano I had lunch in Tiano around midday and then headed out. So the traffic and all the buses and things that head out there were coming the other way. Traffic-wise, I had the road to myself. It felt like kind of thing. There wasn't much of an issue at all. We'd timed the traffic perfectly. And that's one of the things they have on their on the guidebook as well. They tell you, these are the times the tour buses come through and you need to time it so that you're not getting overtaken by the myriad of tour buses coming through.
Yes. Good stuff. My final question is toasted. How toast were you as a result of this ride getting to Milford? Were you cooked, completely burnt? I've had enough. Let me go home. Or were you just warming up? I could just ride back again as a 9 on the scale of 1 to 9. Toasted to pretty lightly toasted. Where were you? How were you feeling when you got to Milford?
I don't think I could have ridden back. Probably about 5 or a 6. Okay. But that final descent, that it felt like 30 kilometres of descent. It was just absolutely incredible, and you felt so energised coming down there. And the views are amazing. I couldn't get past these massive mountains just towering straight up. Were amazing. Yeah,
that's so good. And so probably the final question is, what's next? What's next on the cards? Will you go and do this again? Have you got other adventures planned, similar things? what's next for you?
I would like to do more bike events and things like that. I really enjoy them. I love the fact that you can make the day as hard as you want. So you can make it a real challenge, or you can take it easy. I really love, there was this 79-year-old bloke who was out there doing it as well, and just doing super short days, like 50K days and things like that, but doing it in their time and their effort.
Yep.
The next big bike ride, my wife really wants to do around the mountains. So going down to Otago and sort of linking in that around Lake Dunstan and things like that. It'd be really cool to do and take it at very scenic pace, and with the kids as well would be fantastic.
Yeah, nice. Well done, Geoff. Hey, thank you so much for sharing, giving us a bit of idea of what your Sounds to Sounds was like, and what a great way to finish. It's super cool, but what an adventure, and just needs to organise a leave pass so we can go and get amongst it ourselves. But all the best for your next adventure, and thanks for sharing.
All right, thanks, Richard.
Good job. Well done. Cheers, team.
See ya. Bye.